We are in Revelation chapter 8. Revelation chapter 8. We have gone through the church ages, right? Or the churches, the letters to the churches, all the different ones. 7 of them that were existing in John's day. Each had unique problems about them that were addressed by Jesus, except for Smyrna and Philadelphia. One completely persecuted, the other representing a time period when, in fact, God makes a promise to those believers, you won't see the wrath. I'm going to keep you from the wrath that is to come. And so we believe that each one of those letters, while they spoke to an actual literal church at the time with those problems, with those situations, they also kind of lay out an outline of sorts for the church age and the different time periods, and we went through that. And you get to the church of Philadelphia, and you get to the church of Laodicea, and that promise to Philadelphia to keep them from the day of wrath kind of led to us talking about the rapture and that church being taken out, while the Laodicean church, at least compromised, but really apostate church, and we see representatives of that today as well, will be the church, so to speak, that goes into the tribulation time. Then John's taken up to the throne room of God. He sees some pretty amazing things. The 24 elders that represent the church, the 4 living creatures, cherubim that surround the throne of God. He sees the throne. He sees a scroll with 7 seals on it and begins to weep because nobody in heaven or on earth is found worthy to open that scroll. It had to be a man. It had to be a descendant of Adam of sorts. So it had to be a man, but no man was found worthy. And as he's weeping, one of the elders says to him, "Don't weep. The Lamb," or I'm sorry, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, he's able to take the scroll. So remember the scroll written on the inside. It's a kind of in the form of a title deed of the time period. Written on the inside is what was given, what was to be inherited, and on the outside of the scroll, who was able to take that scroll, who the scroll belonged to. And so nobody's name could be on there. Nobody held a position worthy or was put on the scroll except for Jesus. John looks up and sees the lamb as though it had been slain. He has the right to that title deed. He takes it and he begins to break those seals open. And the judgments of God begin to be poured out on the earth. Now, if you go to reading commentaries and listen to your favorite teachers teach on the book of Revelation, you're not going to get the same thing, probably even out of 2 guys, all the way through. It happens. There's a lot of interpretation going on, a lot of trying to interpret. For the most part, pre-tribulation, premillennial, pre-tribulation rapture guys are going to interpret it, most of it exactly the same or pretty close to the same. There'll be some differences, some things that we can't really nail down too much or too specifically. There are places where we'll find that things need to be interpreted literally because there's just no other way to explain them other than to take it literally. And unless God says this is symbolic of, or we see other places in the Bible where certain things are symbolic, like the sea being symbolic of humanity. So when the beast comes out, when we get to that point, comes out of the sea, that's what we're talking about. That it'll be a man who comes out and begins to lead the world from among the world, the false prophet the same. So there are times to take things symbolically, and I think it's pretty clear when we're supposed to do that. There are others who want to take this book and make it all symbolic. And some who want to take this book and say much of this is already fulfilled. And even to the extent of we're living in the kingdom. Now, this is the kingdom. The age, the church age that we keep calling the church age is the kingdom age. And because God is building his kingdom. And while I agree with that comment, this isn't the millennium. And the millennium is a pretty specific time spoken about. And not just in Revelation. But if they can take those things, if they can take the tribulation time being just this time of persecution, this time of trouble in the world, as it is now, and as it increases, and I don't think that they would argue with the fact that the closer we get to the end of it and the closer we get to the return of Jesus, it's going to get worse. And it's going to get worse the closer we get to the rapture of the church. Really, the Antichrist is called in other places the son, or the lawless one. We see that there'll be much lawlessness in all of the world, which we see today. So they take those and they want to then apply that to the tribulation, the great tribulation, and these plagues that we're seeing in this book, and make those things that have already happened. I don't see it that way. I'm not going to see it that way. There are things to take very literally. These seals that we've already seen, the first 6, I believe to be very literal judgments that are going to happen. When we get into the trumpets next, and then into the vials or the bowls, these things are literally going to happen. These are things that God promised to keep his saints from. Now we saw last week a question answered, and the question we saw actually ended with the week before in chapter 6, verse 7 or 17. For the great day of his wrath has come. Who is able to stand? And then chapter 7 answers that question. You have the 144,000 Jews that are sealed by God, 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel, and we went over that, and the ridiculous notions of some that they actually are that group rather than Israel. That doesn't even make any sense to me. There's nobody who I've ever heard any explanation, whether it's a cult leader or whether even an amillennialist Christian, who I might agree with almost everything else he teaches on, but he gets to this point and tries to make this the church, and it doesn't make any sense at all. There's too many details in there. In verse 4, he says, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel were sealed. That's a very specific statement to then flip that around and put it on the church. And to make it more specific, he runs through 12 tribes with all the names, and 12,000 from this tribe, 12,000 from that tribe, runs down the list. Again, a very specific detail. There's no way that the 144,000 can represent the church and us being now in a kingdom or tribulation time. It just can't be. And in God's great timing, on Wednesday night, we're going through Romans, and Dave has graciously left me 2 of the 3 chapters to teach on replacement theology and how they have not replaced, the church has not replaced Israel. I know God's timing or your timing? God's timing. Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, Paul, when you get to Romans, especially 9, 10, and 11, that talk about that, and specifically about Israel, and really how it's not, they're not the same. The church in Israel are not the same. There are some of Israel who are in the church for sure. Everybody saved in this time, part of the church, right? But there are some specific promises to Israel that do not pertain to the church. In the Old Testament, in the New Testament, right here. The two witnesses that we'll see in coming chapters, they are from Israel. Whether you believe that it's Moses and Elijah or Elijah and Enoch or whoever you want to fall on to be the two witnesses, or just two people who come in the same spirit as those two, whoever you want them to be, they're still Israelites. They are not Gentiles. They come to the land of Israel. They belong there. So you have 144,002 witnesses just from the tribe of Israel. Then, in the second part of chapter 7, those who will believe during the tribulation time but have given up their lives, or it has cost them their life to believe during the tribulation time. Now, I think I made a statement last week that everybody who gets saved in the tribulation time who's not one of the 144,000 is going to lose their lives. If I said that, that was a mistake. Some of them are going to live through the tribulation for sure. Because I happen to kind of go along with Tim LaHaye that everybody who enters into the millennial age, who survived the tribulation time, all of those people entering into that are believers. I could be wrong, and I could decide in my studies between now and the time we get there that I'm wrong. But that's what I think right now. That's what Tim LaHaye taught, and there was reasons why I kind of followed along with that. But then during during that millennial reign, there'll be more born from those believers, and they also will have to make their choice to follow God or not. Because there'll be a rebellion at the end of that. At the end of that 1,000 years, there's going to be another rebellion that Jesus will put down. We don't even have very many details about that. But again, we'll get there when we get there. So this number of saints, they're from every nation, tribe, peoples, and tongues, standing before the throne, before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, saying, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." And all the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped God, saying, "Amen, blessing and glory and wisdom, thanksgiving and honor and power and might be to our God forever and ever. Amen." And then one of the elders answered, saying to me, "Who are these arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from?" And I said to him, "Sir, you know." So he said to me, "These are the ones who come out of the great tribulation and washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb." So these are people who believed, who received Jesus as their Savior during the tribulation time. There are people who will tell you there's not going to be anybody getting saved during the tribulation time. Obviously, that's not true. It's here. Now, there are some who will say that if you have had the gospel clearly presented to you and you chose before the tribulation time to reject that you won't receive it. You won't even have the opportunity to receive it during the tribulation time. I don't know. There's some verses in 1st and 2nd Thessalonians that kind of point in that direction. So maybe we'll get to that another time. But nonetheless, these people come out of the tribulation time. These are not leftover saints. These are not the church. These are people who got saved during that time. I think that says it pretty specifically and clear right there. Verse 15 there says, "Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple, and he who sits on the throne will dwell among them. And they shall neither hunger nor thirst or they shall neither hunger anymore nor thirst anymore. The sun shall not strike them nor any heat, for the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne will shepherd them and lead them to living fountains of water, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. So, I think an indication that a lot of the trouble that we carry on us, a lot of the stress that we carry on us that makes us unable to do the things we want to do, the stresses that make us sick sometimes, that cause us maybe to say things that we don't really want to say, the sins that we have, that we carry, the things we fight against day after day, those things are going to be gone. Right? When we get there, gone. What causes us, and sometimes we call it the cares of the world, we'll finally throw off. These who go through the tribulation time, think about this. We're in the time that we're in now, as bad as it is, as more lawless as it is, the wickedness and the evil that is being put upon the earth now, that men are participating in, is going to be way worse than that in the tribulation time. Right? We even saw one of the horsemen, a quarter of the earth's population is going to die. Just from him. Just from that one being let loose on the earth. That doesn't count anybody who dies in any of the natural disasters that come, any of the other things that happen during that time. Just from the one judgment, the one seal, a quarter of the earth's population will die. So those who are giving their life, and I don't think that these that we see here, these tribulation saints, are numbered with that quarter of the earth's population. That seems pretty specific, and maybe not super specific, that the wars and the things that he will use and be allowed to use to wipe out a quarter of the population, maybe they get caught up in that. Maybe those things are able to touch them. But we know that these actually, though, seems to me in chapter 7, they die because of their faith, not because of a disaster, not because of a judgment. They die because of their faith and their unwillingness to, probably unwillingness to be quiet. At this point, at least, unless that's a reference to everybody who dies in the tribulation time who is a saint, it could be because then if we're going to include everybody beginning to end, part of that number would be because they wouldn't take the number of the beast, right? The mark of the beast. But when you have 144,000 who are here, who are preaching, who have people giving their heart to the Lord because of the word that they preach, then the conversion begins, I think, pretty immediately. And we pray for revival. We hope for revival. We've had some pretty big revivals that have touched Europe and America. This is going to be a massive revival. This is every tribe, every tongue, every nation, all the peoples, somebody from each place giving their heart to the Lord. That's going to be a massive revival. But I don't know where I was, just lost my mind. All right, so let's go to chapter 8. Let's just continue on. Again, I'm going to tell you, I think these things are literally going to happen. I think you have to read it that way. The things that we're about to read. So we have the six seals broken. We have this little parentheses or whatever you want to call it there in chapter 7, answering the question, talking about some other things. And again, when we get now to the trumpets, it's going to happen at the trumpets. The sixth trumpet's going to blow, then there's going to be, let's talk about something else for a minute. I don't know if this is because God just knows John's going to need a reprieve from one thing, and we're going to discuss some things, or if he's anticipating questions, or why he would design it this way, but he has. And so there's these little reprieves before the last of each judgment is poured out. So we move back into the wrath and back into the sequence of events. It says, when he opened the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. I'm willing to bet none of us in here has ever sat for a half an hour in complete silence. I mean, deer hunters maybe, where we don't speak because we're alone in the woods, tree stand, deer blind. If you don't fall asleep, so you don't snore. But, but we may not speak, but there's still noise going on. Nature gets really loud when you're quiet and you're still. You can hear all kinds of birds. Go out today on a nice sunny day like this today, into any little section of away from roads, away from anything else, and the noise that people make. Go out into the woods and see what you hear. Or hear what you hear. You won't see it all. It's loud. Cicadas are really loud, aren't they? Do you ever sit at night and hear the cicadas going nuts? They make lots of noise. There'll be none of that in heaven during this half an hour. Complete silence. Whatever's happening, or whatever's about to happen, whether it's just an anticipation of what will happen with the seventh seal, or whether they see some kind of reaction from God, from Jesus, because he's about to break that last seal. Because 7 is what in the Bible? Number of completion. This first set is going to be complete. When he opens this up, this last seal, things get worse. Now the Bible tells us that God takes great pleasure in the death of his saints. Because we're coming home. There's a reunion there, or a uniting there, that isn't quite complete while we're still here. He knows what it'll be for us to be in his presence. But it also tells us that God takes no pleasure in the destruction or in the death of the wicked, because he knows what eternity is for them as well. And I don't think he hesitates here because he's trying to decide whether he should move forward or not. Obviously, things have already been set in motion. His plan's been set in motion. Nothing's stopping it. And listen, it didn't set in motion from the breaking of the first seal. It set in motion when he said, "Let there be light," in the beginning. And nothing was going to stop it. And the enemy has tried, but has failed all along the way. And if you don't take anything else out of this book, except for the reassurance that he fails all the way to the end, and our God does not. He does not fail. He cannot fail. Nobody can defeat him. It doesn't give any specifics about what this is. And evidently there are books and commentaries written about this moment of silence in heaven. And I've thought about it, and I've wondered, and my guess is just that God takes a minute, Jesus takes a minute to just kind of mourn what's about to happen. But I don't know that. And I was reading Pastor Chuck's commentary real quick, and really I only had about a couple minutes, and this is the only section that I got. And he said, listen, heaven is silent. God is silent about the silence, so let it go. All right? If the Bible doesn't say anything about it, then we shouldn't either, except for that it's there. So, we're going to move forward. I don't have an hour on what the silence in heaven is. Just know, for those of you who have a hard time being quiet, there's coming a day for a half an hour you won't talk. Anyways, Verse 2, and I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and to them were given 7 trumpets. Then another angel having a golden censer came and stood at the altar. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar which is before the throne. And the smoke of the incense and the prayers of the saints ascended before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, filled it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. And there were noises, thunderings, lightnings, and an earthquake. So the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them. All right. So, a lot of angels here. So I saw the 7 angels who stand before God. Some think these are the 7 spirits that were before the throne. Maybe, but not likely. These are just 7 angels that are there, that stand before the throne. Listen, Gabriel, what did he say when he came to Zacharias? He mentions that he stands before the throne of God. He's a messenger angel. He's always bringing a message. It's not that he never fights, because when he comes to Daniel, he's held up by the prince of Persia until Michael comes and takes on the fight so that he can go back. And he says when he goes back, he's going back to fight against the prince of Greece. So, you can't say that, only some of these guys are fighting the battle. They're all engaged in the warfare. But these 7 angels stand before God, and they're given the 7 trumpets. And then another angel having a gold censer. And as we read through this, we see this is kind of a priestly duty. This is something that would happen in the temple, where the priest would go in with the incense, put it on the altar of incense, and the smoke would go up, and it was to represent the prayers of the people. And this little table, this little altar, set before the veil. So as you came into the holy place, you had, to one side, you had the 7-branch lampstand, and you had a table of showbread, and you had this little altar of incense. And he would take some of the coals, I believe, from the altar out, the altar of sacrifice. Anyways, wherever he got them from, he would put them in this little altar, and then he put this incense on, and the smoke would fill the room. And it was to represent the prayers of the people before God, because on the other side of that veil was the Holy of Holies. It's where the Ark of the Covenant was. It's where the mercy seat, the lid to the Ark of the Covenant was. And only the high priest could go in there once a year on the Day of Atonement. And he even had little bells at the bottom of his robe, so that if they didn't, and a rope tied around his ankle, so that when he went in, if he didn't go in, actually having prepared himself before God to go in, and he went in an unrighteous manner, he would die. And that rope was to pull him out, because they couldn't go in and get him. They weren't allowed to. Nobody was allowed to go in there except for the high priest. So some have taken this to mean that this is Jesus here doing this priestly deal because he's our high priest according to the order of Melchizedek. This is kind of a priestly action that's going on. The problem with that is the word for another. It says, then another angel. That Greek word is another of the same kind. Right? So this is the same kind of angel that is holding the trumpets. So it's not Jesus. He is, in fact, doing a kind of a priestly deal, but he's also involved in the judgments that are going to happen. So he brings the golden censer in. He was given much incense that he should offer it with the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. Now, some want to make this all the prayers of all the saints of all time. I don't know if you want to do that. Maybe. I'm not going to argue about it. It just says all the saints, so that's possible, I guess. Certainly all the saints that are going through, and people who are becoming saints, people who are becoming believers during the tribulation time, certainly it's their prayers, for sure. And the smoke of the incense and the prayers of the saints ascend before God from the angel's hand. Then the angel took the censer, which is just like a little pot hanging off of a handle, takes that, fills it with fire from the altar, and threw it to the earth. So we've seen a lot of different things in the throne room of God, but I'm convinced that the tabernacle in the wilderness, the temple that Solomon built, the holy and the holy of holies, the holy place and the holy of holies, were meant to be representative of the throne room of God. And the actions of service in there were meant to represent all of this as well. And so then it's incumbent upon the Levites, who would see what they would be able to see on the inside, as they would go back out to their villages where they lived after they did their service time at the temple. It was for them to go to the people and to preach to the people, to teach them about this and what they see. Because the general populace didn't come into the Holy of Holies, or not in the Holy of Holies. They didn't come into the holy place. They would come to the door of the tabernacle, to the door of the courtyard, and sacrifice their animal there. The priest would come up, put the knife in your hand. So I always had this image of, you brought it, you hand it over to the priest, and the priest goes off and makes a sacrifice for you, and maybe spends some time with you forgiving or confessing or whatever you're supposed to do. He put that knife in their hand, in the person's hand, and then he put his hand on top of it and killed the animal. So you felt the blood of that animal on you. There was no way that you could just walk up, here's my sacrifice, and walk off and just take it lightly if they were doing it correctly. You were involved in the sacrifice. You were involved in the killing. So when we go before God, it's not just list off a list of our sins and say, here we go, thank you for being my sacrifice, I'm on my way. No, we need to understand that we played a part in that sacrifice, in that it was there because of us. His blood was shed because of us. Didn't matter if we weren't standing at the cross, we didn't drive the nails, we didn't beat him, we didn't punch him, none of that. We didn't push a thorn of crowns on his head. But his blood ran for us. And it does one of two things, right? You either reject it, or like the saints in the tribulation time, who are clothed in white, whose clothing was washed in the blood, right? That white cloth that he said, it was washed in the blood of the Lamb. His blood is on us. And it's on us in a good way if we believe. It's on us in a bad way if we don't. If we've rejected the sacrifice, to refuse to go and sacrifice for your sin was not good. People who would misrepresent God, well, you got Aaron's sons who misrepresented God. And what happened to them when they offered, as God called it, strange fire? When they refused to do the sacrifices and just offer the incense in the right way, what happened to them when they came out and stood before the people? Fire from God came out of that temple and consumed them in front of everybody. So to misrepresent God is huge. Eli's sons. We're doing 1 Samuel with the youth group on Wednesday nights. Eli's sons, misrepresenting God, sacrificing wrong, taking the best chunks of a sacrifice as they butchered the animal for themselves and just giving God what was left over. To the point that the people were mad. They knew what they were doing. Eli knew what they were doing, and all he said was, why are you doing this? He didn't make them stop. He should have been thinking about what happened with Aaron's sons. He should have put them out, not just out of the temple. He should have put them out of all of Israel for misrepresenting God. They became enemies of God, and because of his unwillingness to correct that action, he also and they die in one day. All three of them, really, because they come back, the news comes back to Eli, and he's old, and he falls off his stool and whacks his head, and he's dead. So the sacrifice and the priestly duties were huge to be done right before God. And those things are what we see here. These angels now are carrying out in heaven, in the throne room, the actual throne room of God. When he throws this down, all of a sudden the silence is broken. Right? There's the fire from the altar. He threw it to the earth, and there were noises, and thunderings, and lightnings, and an earthquake. Just enough of a reprieve on earth to maybe take a breath. Remember, as we finished up the sixth seal, they were running out to the mountains. They were trying to hide themselves from the wrath of God, from the Lamb. They want to die and can't. And then it's quiet. Oh, maybe it takes a half an hour to draw them all out of their hiding places or something. I don't know. But that silence ends with all of this. Noises and thunderings and lightnings and an earthquake. A great earthquake. So the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. This is kind of like a military formation. They're getting into position. They make sure everything's ready. Their stance is right. All of that. All of us have been in the military, know about going through change of command ceremonies and whatever else, whatever other ceremonial thing we ever had to participate in. And especially if we were in the ceremony, we prepared ourselves. Our suits, our uniforms were right, our boots were polished, everything was set, and you might kind of take the last few minutes of just loosening up a little bit because you knew at a certain point you were going to hear a sound and everybody comes to attention, everybody gets ready, and you're going to be rigid. It's going to be a process for a half an hour or more, however long the official part of that takes place. And when you have to be in a change of command at a very political base for a 3 or 4 star general, you stand there for a long time. I had to do that in Ohio because the base that I was at in Ohio was very political. We had more civilians working there that outranked our base commander. We had generals. Our base commander was a full bird colonel. We had generals that were like everywhere, all over the place. It was a very political base, and so yeah, I got the honor to be in a change of command for a 3 star, and I'm not sure about the honor part, but I got to do it. I mean, it's kind of an honor because a lot of guys in the military don't see that, even in the military. Well, anyways, so these guys prepare themselves. In my mind, when I see they're preparing themselves, they're moving into position, they're getting ready to go, and they're going to hold their place until it's time for them to blow their trumpet. They're not moving. Nobody's moving these guys. And they are before the throne of God. So, the first angel sounded, and hail and fire followed, mingled with blood, and they were thrown to the earth, and 1/3 of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up. Now, again, as we read through some of these, especially in this chapter, there's a lot in commentaries of people trying to guess, or people who are teaching, guess what it actually means. Is it really blood? Is it really? I'm just going to tell you, it's really blood. It's really fire. It's really coming down from heaven. John is saying this comes together, it mingles together, and then it goes to the earth. And climate change people think they got it bad now. 1/3 of the trees are going to burn up. third of the trees were burned up. All the green grass was burned up. So, no more grass-fed beef or whatever other kind of meat you want to raise. All gone. I mean, a third of the trees and the blood that is with that. I can't even imagine what that would be like. I don't even have numbers to tell you what nation would disappear plant-wise to cover this. But it says all the green grass. So whatever is in season at that time, whatever will be green, gone. Huh? Yeah. They want to switch you over to plant-based food? Gone. All gone. Then the second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. So I don't know if you've ever wondered how some of this stuff could happen. And we hear all the time, the astronomers, we had a near miss with an asteroid, or we had a near miss with a giant meteorite. Near misses are like hundreds of thousands of miles away. They're not going to see this coming. There's one asteroid that they think there's 1 out of 300 chance that it's going to hit the earth in like 28 something. Like 800 years from now. They can see it coming. It's coming on a trajectory. They do all the math, and there's 1 in 300 chance that it's going to hit the earth. This one that's coming, unless God's just blinding them and they can't see it, they should be able to see this already coming. And if it's not on the way, if it's just some natural disaster out there that God's orchestrated, and it's not already on the way, then we're a long ways away from the end of days. I don't think we are, because there's too many other things that are saying we're there. We got to remember, these things are coming out of the throne room of God. Right? The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. It's just this meteorite shower that came in, and all these meteors landed in there and blew the whole place up and made it uninhabitable. All right. Out of the throne room of God, fire from the throne room of God, or a meteorite shower that he prearranged to land in the same spot at the exact time he said it would. Which one's more believable? Because you still have to have God to have that happen. Right? It's like, they didn't cross the Red Sea at this point. They crossed down here in the swampy area where it's only 3 inches deep. Okay, well, God drowned all the army of Egypt in 3 inches of water. Horses, riders, everybody. All thrown down. And you can't take away the miraculous in your effort to try to explain away God, so why do we try? I'm telling you, it reads like, to me, this meteorite comes from God. It's not something that's sitting there now. If he can say, let there be light, and it's there, then why can't he just say, it's time, boom, a trumpet blows and this thing comes. It's not coming until this trumpet blows. We're not going to see it before the trumpet. There's no pre-warning. And what good does it do you anyways? Elon Musk hasn't built enough rocket ships, and he hasn't hit Mars yet anyways. Right? We don't have a colony. We don't have any place to go. We're taking this on no matter what comes. The earth is taking this on. And everybody who's here is going to take it on. So now you've had a third of the trees burned up. You've had all the grass, all the green grass, so everything that was in season at that time burned up. And now this comes, this great mountain, this huge meteorite type thing, and it falls into the sea, and a third of the sea becomes blood. And some will try to say, well, it's everything that dies in the sea, because it says it. A third of the creatures die in the sea, so it's all their blood making the sea blood. No. He's turning it to blood. We have another event like this, only without the meteorite, back in Egypt. When Moses said, everything's going to be blood. Boom, boom. Everything's blood, except for a little bit. Somewhere they got a little bit because Pharaoh's Egyptians turned water into blood too. I'm not sure what good it did them. They didn't turn the blood into water again. They turned more water into more blood and just added to the plague of God, the judgment of God. Anyways, this comes a third of that. Now, as a kid, I thought, how are you going to only destroy a third of the shipping vessels? You know, a third of the ocean, that's pretty easy, of the oceans, of the sea, pretty easy to figure that out. We could probably take one or two of them, put them together, say that equals a third. It's going to cover that much space. It's going to destroy that much life. That much will be turned to blood, because it doesn't say all the oceans or all the seas. Well, where do you get a third of the shipping vessels? Well, what did we just have last year? Because of the hard-heartedness of man, we had all of our shipping vessels piled up into a couple harbors on the West Coast. Because they didn't want to let food in. They didn't want to let goods in to be distributed to the people. So it's all piled up over there. It's not hard to gather all of our ships into one place, evidently. Right, and the Suez was blocked for a while, so there was a whole bunch more blocked up over there. We aren't very smart. We really are not as smart as we think we are. We have it laid out for us, and we're walking right into it anyways. You know? I mean, if you've ever seen a scary movie, you know, if you're the guy watching the movie, you know he's on the other side of the door, don't go in there, and you're like, that guy's an idiot. Why would he go in there? It's dark, he's alone, this is a scary movie, you know he's going to die. Why? To the point where, and listen, I have to do that because I hate scary movies, so if I ever go to them, I have to make fun of them because otherwise I have to deal with fear like I was a little kid. Anyways, you're yelling at a movie. Well, look at this. It's right here. And we can look around us and see how it's all being set up to happen. Right? It's not that there's... Now I'm going to get in my political rant. The shortages are made up. I'm going to get us kicked off here. We didn't get kicked off last week, though. I really tried hard last week. Anyways. I mean, I've even talked to a guy who works in a distribution center. They've got trucks piled up full in the parking lots. So for there to be any shortages in any stores, it's ridiculous. It's made up. They're doing it on purpose. I mean, they were obvious about it. They didn't even try to hide it. You had all those ships out in the Pacific Ocean waiting to get in and didn't let them in. Until one of the other governors said, oh, come to my state, I'll let you in. Now all of a sudden we can get a little trickle of stuff coming in. Listen, mankind is just so hard-headed, so think that we don't need God. I honestly think there's only very few who don't believe that there's a God. I just think they all think they can beat him. Right? I mean, listen, if you're a Lions fan, you know what that's like. I'm a Detroit Lions fan. Every year I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl. Every year. I got to say it at the beginning of the year every year, because if they do, I want to be the guy that says, see, I called it. But I know it's never going to happen. There's less chance of that than that meteorite hitting us in 800 years. But you know, right? If you're a sports fan and you're a sports fan of a team that's never very good, or every once in a while they're good and then they're not, and you know you're not even heartbroken at the loss. You have a reason to be mad on Sunday afternoon. you know, this is not going to happen, right? I can see it. You know the coaches, you watch a couple of games, you know their weaknesses, and they act like they don't. But every year, every time, I'm like, all right, yeah, you know, I'm rooting for them, whatever. Whoever it is, whatever it is. The Lions, the Tigers, the Red Wings. I don't even watch the games anymore. I just check the thing. Where are they at? Oh, yeah, right at the bottom where they're supposed to be. They're easy to find. You don't have to read through other names to find out where your team is, just right there at the bottom. But honestly, it's all right here for us to know. If you try to explain to somebody, yeah, it's going to wipe out a third of the shipping, they'd be like, what? Oh, maybe it'll make a tsunami, and what? You know, something that big is going to make a tsunami. It's going to. But to be honest with you, because of our hard-heartedness, because of the way we want to control everything, that we would pile up our ships all into one spot like that, a direct hit will take out a third of them. You don't have to have a tsunami. This thing could fall and just leave nothing but a pebble ripple, if that's what God wanted. It's still going to turn to blood. It's still going to kill all the animals that are in there, a third of the animals, and it's still going to wipe out a third of the ships. And it says it's a big mountain, like a mountain on fire. If you've ever seen a meteorite or a meteor that makes it through far enough and was big enough when it came through our atmosphere to actually be on fire, it's pretty cool. To not just see it as a shooting star, but to actually have it close enough where you can see the flame. I've seen that once. That's pretty cool to see. This won't be cool to see. I mean, it will. You can be on a mountain a long ways away and watch it come across. Be pretty amazing until it hits. The other thing it's going to prove, and proves to me, is that we didn't have one giant meteorite hit the earth and kill everything, all the dinosaurs, and wipe all that out. A flood did it. We don't have any evidence of a big monster meteorite doing it, but we do have evidence of massive floods everywhere on the face of the earth. Well, water couldn't cover all the earth. Well, you know, we got some pretty high mountains that have sea life on the top of them. It's all right here, man. It's so easy to see. The real issue, and it always has been, and it will be even in the tribulation time, we don't want to submit to God, our Creator. We want to do it our way. We want to make it our way, and you're going to let us into heaven whether you want to or not. And He's not. He's not. It's not going to happen. Third trumpet, verse 10 says, Then the third angel sounded, and a great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers and on the springs of water. The name of the star is wormwood. A third of the waters became wormwood, and many men died from the waters because it was made bitter. Now, I want to read that last part of it. It was made bitter. I think back again to the Exodus, and they come out and they go through the Red Sea. The armies of Egypt are wiped out, and 3 days into their travel, they're complaining because they don't have any water. And they come to the pool. It is bitter. They can't drink it until they put the branch in, and it's made good for them. Right? God makes this bitter water good. Well, now God's going to take good water and make it bitter. It's going to make it so it's going to destroy people. It'll kill them. There's more death, right? So we're beyond. You have the quarter of the earth's population die. You have the saints that have been put to death. You have now more death. Wormwood, I learned today in the language the Ukrainian people speak, is Chernobyl, which is where the Chernobyl incident happened. It means wormwood. They named their nuclear power plant Wormwood. So when they had the big accident in '86 and part of it melted down and the radiation was released, and they say it's like 20,000 years before anybody would actually be able to inhabit that without problem again. I don't think they have 20,000 years to get back there, but that was a pretty major deal. So the water was contaminated, the land was contaminated, the atmosphere was contaminated in that area. It affected the countries around it. I didn't realize that was in their language, Chernobyl means wormwood, but you can't point to that incident and say, here it is, because this is, again, a third of the rivers and springs, the fresh water that they drink, that they need to drink, that they need to water their land. A third of that is gone, right? It's polluted. It's contaminated from this star. And then many people, just as many people, die. In verse 12 says, then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. And I looked, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. So you have a third of the sun goes dark. I don't think divide the sun into three sections and a third of it goes dark. It's going to get basically turned down. So if you have a dimmer switch in your house for your lights where you can turn it down so it's not as bright, or you can turn it up to full brightness, evidently God's going to put a dimmer switch on the sun, and whoop, and it'll look like a third of the heavens are gone. Which is amazing, because on nights when you don't have a moon, you can see many more stars. What we have in the heavens now are much more visible if the moon's not out. Well, now the moon and the sun are going to be dimmed, and so are the stars. They'll be able to see a third less of what they can see now. So now you've had the trees burned up, all the green grass burned up, and now, if you think everything's so bad now because of the climate change being warmer, it's all going to get turned down. Everybody's going to be cold. It won't just be a part of the earth. The sun will be out for a third of the earth. Or, not a third of the earth. A third of the sun's power, a third of the sun's brilliance will be down and gone. This is going to get cold. It says, I looked and I heard an angel. That word in some translations is called eagle. It's translated eagle. So everybody is like, is it an eagle? Is it an angel? What's it? All right, think about the four living creatures at the throne of God. One is the face of a calf. One is the face of a man. One is the face of a calf, man, lion, and the fourth is an eagle. So, whether it's one of those cherubim that come out and do this and pronounce it, or whether it's another one, maybe there's another one in heaven, that's his job. This is one of his jobs. And he'll come down and I kind of tend to lean that way, that it's not going to be an eagle, but it'll be one that has the countenance of an eagle or looks like an eagle. So one of those cherubim that represent that before God will come out and will make this pronouncement. Flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blast of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. That's pretty bad when in the middle of the judgments being poured out, One of them is given a message to say the next three. And we're not even, you're only at the middle judgments. You're not even to the bowls or the vials. Some call them bowls, some translations call them bowls, some translations call them vials, but that's not really all that important. But they're worse than the trumpet judgments. But right here in the middle of this, after the fourth one, there's a message saying basically get ready because it's about to get a lot worse. So, I think we'll go ahead and stop. I mean, we got time to read through, but not spend much time on it. So we're going to go ahead and stop here. Hopefully, we'll move through chapter 9 faster. I don't think I need to do quite as an extensive review every week, but hopefully we'll get through chapter 9, but hopefully we can get through a little bit more and get into chapter 10 as well. But we'll see. We'll see what the Lord has for us next week. Read ahead. I'm not afraid of you reading ahead. I hope you do. Study it. Know what's coming. Come like you're coming to class in school. Don't come like you're coming to, like I used to go to class. See what the teacher has to say today about whatever we're talking about. Don't do that, man. Read ahead. Study a little bit. Dig some things out for yourself. Because I can't give you everything. I'm not giving you everything. I had a pastor friend of mine who was, complaining about how long it was taking me to go through some of his teachings and all the stuff. And there's so much stuff here I got to put out. And he was frustrated with it. I'm like, dude, man, you don't have to give it all to him. It's like, you take them there and then encourage them to go find it and dig it out for themselves and eat it themselves. You don't have to give them everything, every little detail, all just, we're not college professors and scholars. We're just pastors, man. Preach the message, preach the gospel, and give them what you give them. I mean, you want it to be right. You don't want it to be, you don't be glib about it and nonchalant about it. But give them something for them to discover on their own. Point them in a direction. Say, here, look, you want to go do this. You want to consider this. So, read ahead. See what we're going to look at next week. And pray. Pray for us. Pray for our friends, our neighbors. We don't want this to happen to anybody. We don't want them to go through this. And if you have somebody in your life that you're like, you know what, and serve them right, listen, we probably all have that on any given day. You need to get your own heart right with the Lord then first, and then go pray for that person too. Right? So people can push our buttons. I get it. I understand. But when we really consider this, we don't want anybody to go through this. Right? So, let's pray. Father, thank you again for your word and for the warnings, Lord. And for making it easy to understand. Lord, we just take you at your word without trying to manipulate things, without trying to create hoops for us to jump through and loopholes here and there. If we would just take you at your word, it's easy to understand. In fact, you make that statement to Moses and through Moses to the people, that your words would not be too hard for them to understand. And Lord, think about even in Nehemiah's time when they just stand up, the priest stands up and the people gather around and he just reads the law. And it cuts them to their heart and they begin to weep and they begin to repent. Lord, I pray that people who will read this now, people who are yours, people of the church, would read this book and begin to repent. And Lord, that we would begin to proclaim your word to our friends and our family, our neighbors. Lord, give us opportunities to do this. And Lord, give us wisdom and the ability to answer the questions that are going to come. Or guide us to the answers to those questions when we don't know the answer. Just guide us right to it so that we can give the answer and give a right answer. We don't want it to just be our best guess. Lord, I pray that you would remind each of us this week as we go through our busy schedules to stop and to hear and to read, to pray for those who need prayer that we know about. Lord, I pray that in these last days, as your church is getting ready to come home, that part of that getting ready would be to be more diligent to do the things you've called us to do and given us to do, so that many more will come to know you before we leave. And Lord, to get the word out so that when we do leave, that the leaving of your church will be another witness to your faithfulness to those who believe. And that we would, even in that, play a part in the conversion of those who would come to you in the tribulation time. But help us with patience. Remind us to be kind. And we thank you most of all, Lord, that we will not go through this. That we are among those who have been reserved from the wrath of God and not to go through it. In Jesus' name, amen.